Good evening, everybody. I hope that people can hear me now. I can see myself and hear myself. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mariska Berger. I'm a speech and language pathologist in the province of Quebec, and I'm a representative of the National Council of Isaac Canada in Quebec. I'm going to be your moderator tonight. And I'm going to talk you through our setup for tonight first before I introduce our speaker. And I am not able to forward my slide. There we go. We are going to use the guidelines for communication access for all tonight. We're going to use that for all our presentations. This was first introduced in Cancun and is also available on the Isaac website. For tonight, there's a small change. We are not going to use a chat function tonight, but any questions you may have, may it be technical questions about the Zoom session or content questions, can be put in the Q&A. Franklin Smith will be monitoring our Q&A for any technical questions, and he might be able to chat with you if there's a problem that needs to be resolved. All content questions will be kept until the end, and Kathy and I will address those after her presentation. So, before I introduce Kathy, I just wanted to mention that we do have additional upcoming webinars. On June 18th, Paulina Finac, Vera Ralin, and Rafael Santana will be presenting on the use of AI and robots to support collaboration. In July and August, we're taking a small summer break, but we will return with our monthly webinars in September. And then now I have the great pleasure to introduce our very own Kathy Howery. And I had the great pleasure of meeting Kathy a few months ago, and it was such a wonderful, it was so wonderful to meet someone with such passion and knowledge in the area of AEC, and she is our current Isaac Canada president. Kathy received her PhD in special education from the University of Alberta in 2017, and she's currently an educational consultant and teaches in the Teaching Students with Complex Communication Needs Master's Certificate at the University of Alberta. Kathy has presented nationally and internationally, and will tonight dive into her research on what it is really like for people who speak or are expected to speak using a speech-generating device. The objectives for tonight are about this word I've stumbled over every night, Kathy, phenomenological methods and the value of this research methodology for the field of AEC, to reflect upon to what extent a speech-impaired person must enter into a technologically mediated life to make their voices heard, and to explore the themes raised in this study and why they are important for our understanding of what it is like to speak with or through a speech-generating device. Kathy, it's my absolute pleasure to pass it to you. And for everybody listening today, please put your questions in the Q&A and we will address those afterwards. Let me stop screen sharing. Oh, Kathy, you're already sharing. Perfect. So I'm going to... Kathy, you're muted. Toolbar switch to the bottom, Kathy.
No, it was, yeah, sorry about that. Perfect. We're having mutation, oops, oh dear, mutation problems today or something like that. I am going to just do a couple of things here on my PowerPoint, not on that. That's a nice thing to actually talk about as well, but just give me a second. I need to get over here to here and to here. And to here. All right.
The floor is all yours, Kathy. Good luck.
I will always remember the frown of disapproval on the speech therapist's face as I failed one speech assessment after another. The therapist seemed particularly officious when she told Davina and me that the lip signing and lip reading system that we had fashioned on our own was insufficient. She assumed that no one could learn it, and that I would be restricted in communication if I did not acquire an artificial voice. You know no one will understand you. You will be dependent upon your wife and your mother-in-law. Don't you want to be independent? Don't you want to be independent? These are the words of Albert Robillard, a professor of sociology who acquired a motor neuron disease and, like many people with his condition, lost the ability to speak intelligible, audible words. In his book, Meaning of Disability, The Lived Experience of Paralysis, Dr. Robillard recounts his journey through this disease as perhaps only a trained ethnographer might, with the insights that can only come from experience as lived through. Don't you want to be independent? Dr. Robillard lived in a time when speech-generating devices were just emerging as viable alternatives for people with complex communication needs. His book was published in 1999. He speaks of trialing macaws and other simple speech-generating devices of the day. What he mostly speaks of is the institutions of individualism, the value Western society places on independent individuals, and the belief that independence is good while dependence is somehow bad, and the widespread belief that every problem has a technological fix. As he said, he was told he would be made into a bionic man. Yet throughout the book, what he holds on to is being a man, and what he persistently rails against is the demands of the device. In the years before speech-generating devices were created, the communication system that Dr. Robillard and his wife fashioned would have been seen as wonderful and inventive. The fact that he was also able to have his doctoral students learn his speech system was more marvelous, as it allowed him to go on with his work, not independently, mind you, but in a timely and, shall we say, collegial manner. But Dr. Robillard's experience of disability happened in a time where the bright new shiny hope of augmented and alternative devices, indeed the field of AAC itself, was still emerging. And because these devices were available in the world, because they existed, there was indeed already a demand for Dr. Robillard that they be used. Don't you want to be independent? Hello, as I was already introduced, my name is Kathy Howery, and what I'm going to share with you tonight is the research that began with my undertaking of that PhD in special education. While my PhD is, one might say, still relatively new, my experience working with children and youth with complex communication needs goes back now some over 40 years. I started in the field at a school for students with multiple disabilities. I worked with marvelous technologies such as the Apple IIe computer and the adaptive firmware card, and the most high-tech Zygo 16 and Zygo 100. If I could have imagined then the AAC devices that exist today, I am certain I would have thought all my students' communication challenges would have been solved. As I speak with you here this afternoon, I am certain that many of you will agree that we still have a long way to go. What I'm going to share with you is part of my broader phenomenological study into what it's like to speak with, or is it through, a speech-generating device. During my doctoral program, I spent over 5 years reading accounts of speech-generating device users, interviewing young people with physical disabilities who used or had used a speech-generating device in the context of their classrooms and social activities, and being with these same young people on a day-to-day basis. This being with is referred to in phenomenology as close observation. Well, prior to engaging in this research, I had been with young people who use AAC countless times at various points in my career, but it was always for a different purpose. I had never been just with them to watch, to understand, to learn. In the past, I was there to help, to intervene, to implement. During this study, I just watched and listened and listened and watched. Phenomenology as a method investigates the lived experience of those who have experienced a certain phenomenon. Makes sense? In the simplest terms, it may be described as the study of lived experience. To engage in such an inquiry, one needs to enter into, or perhaps more honestly, to seek to embrace a phenomenological attitude, where one suspends presuppositions, past beliefs, and preconceptions about a phenomenon, and instead work to be, or try to be, open to how the phenomenon shows itself. Phenomenology is primarily a method of and for questioning, rather than a method for answering or discovering or drawing determinate conclusions. The hope is, in the questioning, that there exists the possibility of potentialities for experiencing openings, understandings, and insights, which might give us a glance into the meaning of the phenomenon and the events in their singularity. Phenomenology is the study of the world as it is immediately experienced. In order to accomplish this, one must seek concrete lived experiences, experiences as lived through. While this might seem a simple task, it is often not. In undertaking my study, for example, when I asked the young people to tell me about a time they spoke with a speech generating device, they would often say, "Oh, it's great. It helps me to speak with others. It helps me to communicate." While all of these reflections are most likely true, they are reflections upon the experience, not the actual experience itself. It is far easier to have someone recount what they think about something than to tell you about a concrete moment of experience. Phenomenology then seeks to uncover the pre-reflective experience, to show what it is like, not to tell about what it is like, to understand what it might be like, not to explain why it might be so. My work draws upon a particular method of phenomenology, that being the phenomenology of practice, as developed and articulated by Dr. Max van Manen. A phenomenology of practice can be understood as an inquiry that addresses and serves the practices of professionals, as well as the common practices of everyday life. My work is further informed by the writings and insights of phenomenologists whose writings explore human-technology relations. These scholars have shown that technological artifacts are not neutral intermediaries, but that they actively co-shape people's being in the world. Technological artifacts help to share human actions, perceptions, and create new practices, and indeed new ways of living. The very presence of a technology in the world can create something beyond an invitation, something much more akin to a demand. For example, in exploring what an ultrasound machine does, Peter Paul Verbeek suggests that its very presence fundamentally shaped his and his wife's experience of their unborn child. The mere availability of testing possibilities made us feel responsible for not testing and accepting the risks connected with that. Beyond an invitation to see into the womb, then, the ultrasound, it seems, created a demand, or at least a strong moral imperative to do so. It is with these insights and these questions that arose as I watched and listened and read about the lived real experiences of speech generating device users that today's particular glimpse into their technologically mediated lives emerged. What by their very presence in the world do speech generating devices do? And what do these devices afford people who cannot effectively communicate with their natural voices? What is the meaning of these devices in the lives of such people? Gathering and learning from lived experience. As Sarah Blackstone points out, the most important voices are often the hardest to hear. I gathered stories through interview, both face-to-face, which often took numerous hours, and virtually, which took many days, and through being with these young people in their daily lives and documenting moments of augmented communication. And also through electronic means over a period of months, and in some cases, even years. What I would like to do now is provide you with a glimpse into one of the many aspects of speaking through a device, what the device demands. What is it like for a child or a person to give audible voice to their thoughts? What is it like for a child who, to give audible voice to their thoughts, must do so through a speech generating device?
First I think what to say, then I input the words into my device. Once I have constructed my message, I push speak so that I can speak those words out loud.
Merleau-Ponty, the famous French philosopher, tells us, when we speak, we do not think about speaking. Rather, if we think at all, we think of what we are saying. We must, in fact, stop picturing or code or even the messages to ourselves and make ourselves sheer operators of the spoken word. Merleau-Ponty, 1964. While this rings true for those of us who can speak with our natural voices, it hardly seems to be the case for those who must speak or speak with a machine. When one speaks with, or is it through, a device, there are many unique demands that may be encountered in the experience. There are the cognitive demands, memory, attention, visual scanning that using the device demands. Let's listen to Jane's experience.
Last year I got my first talking device, which is called the Couch Talker. My therapist Chris came to school to teach me MinSpeak. I feel Chris did a great job on teaching me where the icons were and what they meant. She did not teach me how to express myself with it. For example, one particular day I will send out of the classroom for drooling, but really I had just sneezed out some muffin. For the life of me I couldn't find the words to say that I had just sneezed.
Jane's recollection may be as much a story of abuse as a story of not being able to find the words to say on her new device, and it may be important for us to consider both together. The expressive language of children who use speech-generating devices are often restricted by factors that are out of their control. What these children can express at any one time is largely dependent on both the accessibility of their system and on the specific vocabulary that has been provided for them, that is available to them. Despite her ability to physically push the buttons, the cognitive demands of recalling where the words were to say, "I just sneezed," remain beyond her reach. Not being able to find our words may be something that we can all recognize. It's on the tip of my tongue, we might say, but seldom are we really silenced by our search. Instead, we fill the space finding other words to express ourselves. Not so for Jane. She is left silently searching and vulnerable. Without words that one can express, can anyone truly be safe? And even if one can manage the cognitive demands, the demands of a voice that is a machine can still render one silent. I am chatting with Gabby when the alarms go off on her device.
My voice is running out of gas. There is a gas meter. The doo-doo, you can't shut it off. I am trying to talk, but my body's spazzing out on me. It's a race between me and my battery.
Too tired to talk. A feeling that we all may have had once in a while. Or perhaps we've been talking so much or so loud that our voice is sore. Worn out, we might say. Our voice is running out of gas. But in reality, it is I, who am running out of gas. But imagine being Gabby. In the middle of her conversation, which she is not tired of talking about, her voice is going to die, and it announces to the world in the most annoying way. The device sounds the alarm. Do, 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 do. How strange this might seem to her conversation partner. How disruptive. "I am running out of gas. You must plug me in soon or I will no longer speak for you," demands or shouts the machine. In response, Gabby enters into a race with the machine, a race that sends her body, and very likely her mind, into spasm. The spasm in turn takes precious energy and time that Gabby does not have if she's going to say what she was beginning to say before the announcement that her time to talk is running out. Speech-generating devices today have long-lasting batteries that are meant to last through a day's worth of conversation. Yet for a myriad of reasons, they may not. Perhaps someone has forgot to plug it in the night before. Perhaps it is a day where Gabby has been particularly chatty, or perhaps it is a day that she has been using her device to text all day long with her friends across the room. Whatever reason, the machine demanded to be plugged in to find somewhere to get energy. This may be fine if Gabby is in the classroom or at home, but imagine if she is not. Imagine if she, like her friend Lil has shared with us, that she is taking the bus across town to meet someone and her device screams at her, "I'm about to die." What might it be like to be thusly rendered silent by the demanding device? And there are physical demands. While the speech-generating devices bypass many of the physical demands of speech, they impose others. Accessing the messages one wants to speak with a body that is unruly and perhaps inconsistent in its ability to move can prove quite demanding indeed. This feat may also require other technologies to ask the device to speak.
The time I hate most is at night when I'm out of my chair. When I'm out of my chair, I can't use my device, which means I can't talk, and it means I can't even text my friends. I know my friends are all texting each other and making plans. I can keep up with the chat when I have my device, but not when I'm out of my chair.
As human beings, we talk. We talk in bed. We talk laying on the lounge chair beside the pool. We chat as we walk. We may take the ability to speak utterly for granted. But for Gabby, the ability to talk is only granted when she's in her chair with her switches by her head and her device placed in front of her. Her device demands that she use her switches demands that she sit in her chair. As her friends are madly texting under the covers about what will happen tomorrow and the gossip of today, Gabby is left out, not by her friends, but by the demands of the machine. And there are professional demands, or at least expectations made by and had by professionals, as well as often others. My one speech therapist wants me to use my voice. My other speech therapist wants me to use my device. What am I supposed to do? The demand to be used. Consider Donna's story.
When I first got my new talker, I only used it for small words and beginning words. That seemed to help people understand what I was trying to say with my voice. I wanted to use my voice, but my speech teacher and my teacher wanted me to use my talker, so I kept trying. I kept trying to use my talker more and more, but it was so hard. My fingers sometimes couldn't reach the letter I wanted. It seemed the harder I tried, the stiffer my fingers got. One time my body got so tight, instead of pushing a button, I pushed the whole thing on the floor. Why, nobody was happy about that. I thought, good, maybe they won't trust me with this thing anymore and I can go back to using my voice. But no, my teacher said, Donna, you just keep trying. You won't get the hang of this overnight. Well, it turns out I didn't have any choice in the matter. My teachers weren't happy when I tried to talk instead of using my device. Sometimes they wouldn't even listen to me unless I used me talker. I even had to type out yes and no. That was really weird because I had been saying yes and no for years to communicate through the 20 questions game. Now I had to type it? Funny. I thought they told my mom that this was going to help me communicate, not shut me up.
To demand that the device be used, to be used even when there's another way. In one way, we may understand this as a language teaching opportunity. In Canada, where I'm from, and where we're talking to you from today, in French class, we were encouraged, one might say, even demanded to speak French, using our native language, which for some of us, maybe many of us in my province, was English, as was mine, was frowned upon. How were we to learn French if we always reverted to English? But for Donna, this is somehow a different experience. The device was supposed to let her voice be heard, her voice, not just the voice of the machine. For Donna, the presence of the device demanded that she abandon her more efficient means of communication, her use of her natural voice, her natural means of expressing or disagreeing, her yes, no. Now, one might suggest that it was not the device that silenced Donna, but her teacher. The teacher was the one making the demands of her to use it exclusively. Yet, is that entirely so? It was the presence of the device in Donna's life, the presence of something that she and her family likely worked very hard to acquire, that changed her communicative abilities. In many ways, letting her express herself to others as she gave them cues as to what she was saying with her voice, something we have come to know in the field as augmenting her natural speech. Her device let her be understood by others, yet ironically, while the device gave her more options for audible expressions, Donna's experience was not that. Donna's experience was that of being silenced. Meeting Dylan. The first time I spoke to Dylan was via Skype. I was shocked to see that he had been using what I considered an old-fashioned system. He was pointing to a communication display, and his assistant was voicing the words so that I could hear them. I was so taken back by Dylan's use of his non-electronic system that I actually forgot to ask him, what was it like? Instead, I peppered him with, Well, have you tried? He placated me for a while and then said he would send me a story that would explain his choice. This was the story that I received that day by email. I was presenting at a conference. I had received an award, so you could say that I was probably a bit more high profile than most participants. My brother acted as my attendant and echoed for me as I spelled out my answers to the questions that were being asked of me. Many of the new people I met at the conference were quick to give their opinion on other technologies and approaches that would work better for me. So many of these people never took the time to listen to my journey of the extensive things that I had already tried. In nearly all cases, their suggestion was something that I had already explored. Also, it seemed that only the high-tech solutions were valued. Many of these people made me feel that I was a failure because I was still using a low-tech approach. There was more than one person who commented that they hoped that I would get more independent and use the computer technology to respond to their questions rather than my brother as a facilitator. What they didn't know, and what I admit not bothering to tell them, was that I was deliberately using the low-tech facilitation so that I could quickly meet and respond to people's questions. My voice output technology is so slow, it would have taken me forever to respond. It was so frustrating. The constant and pervasive demand of time. Talking to people with an assistive device is not easy. Consider Rebecca's experience at school with her device.
I was in grade 7 when I got my device. I was so excited, but as I got to school and tried to talk to my friends, I just couldn't get the words out fast enough. I am not a slow thinker, but even with my new device, I am a slow talker. At first my friends waited to hear to what I had to say, but after a couple of sentences they lost interest and had moved on to something else. I was always behind, or always making them just wait for me. Most of the time when I got out what I wanted to say, it really didn't even make sense anymore cause they were 3 topics ahead of me. So after a few times of that, I just pretty much just stopped talking.
Talking with a device may put you on the banks of a fast-flowing river, watching as a stream of conversation flows by. It may also make the people moving effortlessly through the flow of the conversation uncomfortable or anxious as they recognize that you are not one of them. The irony of this experience is somewhat remarkable. The very thing that the machine provides, the connection through voice, it also seems to deny the free-flowing ease of human vocal interaction. And finally, we might ask what demands are made of the voice of the machine or by the voice of the machine.
One time I tried to use my device to call Handy Bus. I called them and somebody picked up the phone at Handy Bus. I said I want to be picked up this Friday at 1:30. My address is 3453 Apple Way. The Handy Bus person said, "What do you want?" I repeated my message. I want to be picked up this Friday at 1:30. My address is 3453 Apple Way. The line went dead. Maybe they thought I was a crankpot. I don't know. Anyway, I thought, okay, next. I guess I wait till Mom comes home and she can call them. I think they will know she is a real person.
Tyler was attempting to do what we may all do, or certainly have done on a regular basis, use the phone to request a service. We might be calling for a taxi or maybe a pizza. When doing so, we pay attention to why we are calling, what the message is that we want to convey. Our voice announces us, but unless we have a malady such as a cold or laryngitis, our voice is passed over, unnoticed, except to bring ourselves into meaningful contact with the other human being on the line. But in this instance, it is not so for Tyler. For Tyler, the voice got in the way. Today, we may so often hear synthetic speech on the other end of the telephone line. This is so common, in fact, that many of us may be tempted to do to Tyler exactly what was done by the handy bus operator: hang up. A computer-generated voice may speak for itself, telling the person on the other end that there's not really anyone present on the call, but rather it's a robocall or a computer, and that the message is not in real time from a presently connected person, but recorded so as to make marketing or general information call. And we may decide that within seconds of hearing this voice that we are not interested in listening to it. We are not compelled to listen, as our perception is there's really no one there that we are in real contact with. So, what then has happened for Tyler? It seems that with a voice from the machine, he cannot be heard. In attempting to speak for himself, one might say that he has disappeared. His presence as a person is not heard, but rather is stifled by the voice of the machine. The very technology that has allowed him to participate in the world of speaking beings has itself acted to once again relegate him to silence. He is, one might suggest, once again disabled in this new world of every use of computer-generated speech. This is perhaps all the more poignant considering the very people he was attempting to make contact with were those especially tasked with assisting persons with disabilities. And yet, while these anecdotes may lead us to believe that demands outweigh the affordances offered by speech-generating devices, it may not be so. Consider this as we listen to Jesse's story of being heard.
I was worried. My doctor talked about surgeries I would have if I wasn't so complex. Then he started talking about my organs failing, so I knew I had to speak up. Not my mom, not my minions, but me. That day I came with my Toby all ready to go. I walked, rolled in and introduced myself and explained I make all my medical decisions. With something of a shocked look on his face, the doc exclaimed, "You are locked in." Man, was that a relief. I was worried.
Oops, right.
My doctor talked about surgery. I then proceeded to give him my history and tell him I am terrified my organs are failing. He talked directly to me and showed me my results, explaining why the other doctors are wrong. I told him that I feel like crap all the time and instead of the usual look, and that's too bad. He listened to me. He explained the tests he wanted to do, then told me I could say no. That was a great day, the day my voice was heard.
Speaking for oneself and being heard by someone who perhaps for the first time not only heard you, but indeed saw you. Indeed, this would be a momentous occasion, a moment when the device is used to make the demands of others that perhaps make the demands it imposes upon the user far less important. The demanding device is also an enabling device, a device that can be in speaking for the non-speaking person, call upon others to pay attention, to see the non-speaking person in a different light, to attend to them in ways that may not be afforded without the voice from the machine.
I then proceed.
So, what can we learn from such a phenomenological study? And why is this type of knowing important? At a conference in 2012, when the first time that I attempted to present this type of material, I was asked, so what can you do with this type of study? At first, quite honestly, I was taken aback. But then I gave the answer that my professor had given us in class. It is not what you do with phenomenology, it is what phenomenology does with us, to you. For me, this journey into phenomenology is constantly challenging my many assumptions that I had long held about technology and technological solutions. And through reflection on what it is really like, challenging me to also examine and in some instances, address and change my practices. I began to understand why, despite how wonderful and sometimes even seemingly magical speech-generating devices can be in the lives of persons who are speech impaired, that they may also be woefully inadequate. I came to understand why it might be that people like the young woman who told me, people always think that high tech is better, and sometimes it is, but for me, this works better, would choose other ways. I was faced to look at my belief in technology. I came to question understanding of technology as being a much sought after solution to the problem of being a speech impaired person may, in fact, be ableist. Were my past views as technologies as the solution to disability really just saying to a speech disabled person that you are not good enough unless you embrace technologies that, quote, fix you, that make you, quote, normal, to help you talk like a, quote, normal person? As Jessica recounted to me in an authoritative voice,
I hate it when people call my device my voice. If my device is not with me, I still want people to communicate with and value me.
having a voice is really so much very more than the audible voice that is provided by the speech generating device. Voice can be audible, but voice can also be a myriad of other things. Giving voice to one's thoughts, opinions, desires can be done in so many ways. We in the field of AAC must strive to honor the many, multiple modes of communication that people whose primary modality is not speech choose to convey themselves and share their voices. We must consider that while speech-generating devices provide us with the mode of communication that we are most familiar and comfortable with, that sometimes the demands of the device may outstrip the affordances it provides. It is our task, beyond seeking to provide people with speech-generating devices, to honor and allow people to communicate through the means that they feel they can best use and that they choose. And I came to the realization that these devices, whether they be electronic as speech generating devices or non-electronic as communication displays, are so much more than mere tools for talking. In fact, the whole tool paradigm may indeed be questionable. It became clear to me that speech generating devices shape the very life world of those who use them. And I began to understand what it might be like to be shaped by both the affordances and the demands of living in a technologically infused state. I came to wonder if the real goal of technology is not the affordance of independence, but the affordance of connection, to allow us to be connected with each other, to engage with and support each other, to become intertwined with and interdependent upon one another. After all, who is truly independent in our world? And who would really want to be? For now, I will leave as I began, listening to the voices of people who use speech-generating devices to make their voices heard.
We have much to learn about assistive technology, about its power, about its potential, and, perhaps most of all, about its dreams deferred, about how much work you and I still have to do to close the gap between its promise and everyday reality.
As I listen, I hear that call, the call to make contact, to close that gap between the promise and the practice. I hear the call to help the students that I work with contact their hopes and dreams for active, meaningful, and timely interaction in the classroom and ultimately the world. I mostly hear the call to listen. Is it then, when all is said but surely not done, that the message of children and people who speak with machines, that the real transformational power of technology comes when the human beings and not only the technology can be heard? I hope you may be called to listen too. Thank you for listening. Questions, comments?
Kathy, thank you. That was wonderful. There are a few questions in the Q&A.
Great.
The first question that I wanted to draw your attention to is, Um, Sheridan mentions, dare I go into whether we can make steps in changing our field, your current thoughts. So is it time that we get rid of the overarching term AAC, as it may just not be fit for purpose when the vast majority of people see it as device-centric? Is it time to talk about the supported population, people with complex communication needs, rather than a narrowed solution? Your thoughts?
I want to say yes, but I'm going to also say, but the way, if we really look at the definition of AAC, it is not device centric. The definition of AAC is all the modes that we all use to communicate with each other. Those of us who are mouth talkers, privileged speech. But I think rather than saying that we should lose the term AAC, I think we need to go back to what we really meant by AAC and what we really mean, and to truly afford multiple modes of communication, both, and I haven't hit tonight on receptive communication, I hit only on expressive, but I think both are tremendously important. And I think our definition has always been that. I think we just have gotten a little bit dazzled by the shiny devices, as I did too, as I said, I was there, I was too. Okay.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Please read my question in full, not precise. Do we attempt to reprogram this?
Oh. Do we attempt to reprogram? Sheridan,
yeah.
Reprogramming the understanding is a really good way of putting it. Revisiting and reinforcing and reprogramming, I think, is something that is really important. I'm going to put a plug in for something that is on the Isaac webinar, which is a session that I moderated last year for AAC Awareness Month on ableism. And I think a lot of these topics were addressed there. So if you want to go deeper, go and visit that.
Someone is actually recommending maybe we should flip it from AAC to CAA, communication access for all.
Yes, Sarah, I concur completely. Although, I mean, I hesitate to change it because I don't know that we change it, but if that change will make people broaden their understanding, I'm all for it. So yeah, Sarah, thank you.
There's a question on advice for parents when they're focused on the use of a speech generating device. How can we make them see the value of low tech as well? Any advice? Well,
I hope this talk helps that a little bit. And I think it's tricky because we want our kids to be what we expect them to be, and speaking with a voice like ours is what we expect. But I wonder if one of the things that I do in my practice is, and I've done more, is to do things like the pragmatics profile or to just say, what are all the ways your child is already using to communicate with you? Your child is already a communicator. Let's honor and expand those. And sometimes, yes, a voice output system might be really appropriate, but I think I get really anxious when I hear my child doesn't communicate. One of the things that I like to say from a philosopher that I can't pronounce his last name, is one can't not communicate. All kids communicate. So if we honor that and we build on it, not take it away, then hopefully we can help parents to understand that. And I think that's on all of us as professionals. I think, the holy grail is to get a speech generating device. And if the holy grail is interaction and authentic and autonomous communication, then I think it becomes easier to not see the speech generating device as a holy grail. Anyway, I don't know if that really answered your question. That's a big question. Yeah.
But Kathy, it's very true what you're saying, because I think if we show parents that their children are already communicating, it takes so much of the edge off, right? They really feel like, oh, my child needs this, but they've forgotten to really look at their child. And I keep telling them, you are I'll take a random name as an example, but I tell them, you have my daughter Yana, you have Yana ears. You just need to look at your child and you know what your child is already trying to tell you without a communication device, without anything. You know what your child is trying to say. And sometimes that gets lost when they start using a communication device. They put all their eggs in that basket and they forget about a glance, a point, a gesture, a reach. They're so incredibly important. So I think it's important that we remind parents of total communication, right? We need to look at everything your child does.
Yeah. Audit,
Let's see.
okay. Yeah. So
Auditing.
Sheridan, yeah, lots of good questions. I'm reading them here. What part of you, the presenter, is saying happens because of the learning curve of SLPs as they, yeah. You know what?
Or how
I think,
companies are actually promoting the devices too, right?
well, and I think, of course they are. And my experience is that SLPs don't get a robust, there's a word that's hanging around a lot, a robust introduction or a robust experience with multimodal communication. And I was really careful, for the most part, to use non-electronic and electronic in terms of communication systems rather than high tech and low tech. And I first heard that from Gail Porter, and I adored it, because I think the minute that we put high and low around something, there comes a judgment. So some things are electronic, some things like communication displays are non-electronic. And even just right there, we're both talking about communication devices. And I think to help SLPs understand that there is all the multimodal means, there's non-electronic systems, there's electronic systems, and we need, just like we, look at me, just like we all use all of them, so our children need to have the access to and the possibility to embrace all of those. I'll tell a little story right now, which is kind of, because we have time, because I was so worried that I was going to not run out of time that I took out some things, but I'll tell a story. I was at an AAC camp a couple of years ago, and I insisted at this AAC camp that we had the non-electronic version of every one of the electronic versions that the kids had. And so we worked really hard to provide a non-electronic version. So as we were leaving the AAC camp on the Sunday, one of the young men had something, as he was leaving camp, he had something under his jacket. And I said, oh, what will I call him? George, what is that under your jacket? And he showed me, and it was a non-electronic version of his Word Power 108 that we had created. And I said, you want to take that with you? Why? And he said he wanted to use it at recess and with his friends. And I thought, holy smokes, this kid was quite a competent user of his electronic system, but he understood the power of that to the degree that he wanted to sneak it out of camp. And whether or not the university, whoever paid for it to be printed, I didn't care. He got to take it home with him. So there you go. Anyway, so I think those are the things that really important. Karen, and I see Karen Becca, thank you. I like what you shared about the importance of interdependence in communication. Really, you know, it is the essence, right? Communication is about interrelationships and interdependence. And I worry so much that we have forgotten that, and that in our push for independence, we have really not provided a real world experience. Because I'll say again, who wants to be independent? I don't want to be independent. I love the interdependence that I have with the people in my life. And I want to make sure that I honor and address that. Okay, blah, blah, blah.
There's a question from Sarah. I'm going to read it for you. What features of electronic devices apps might we need that we don't currently have, or are they stuffed with so many features they become difficult to use?
I
A little bit
think
of both.
a little bit of both. I guess what I will say is one of the people who heard the stuff that I'm trying to unpack said that this is what device developers need to consider, these stories, these moments. And so I'm not going to answer that because I really don't know, but I think paying attention to these real lived experience, these real moments, as developers, would help to create systems, language systems that take into context both the affordances and the demands of technology. I'm not I've never created a AAC language system. I am not a technological designer, but I do think it's really important that people that do that
Are mindful.
reflect on what it's really like.
Yeah.
Not what we imagine it's like, but what it's really like.
Kathy, this is not a question that comes from the Q&A, but something that popped in my head as I'm thinking about this. But did you question your participants on recommendations they would have to make this? It was no? Okay.
That wasn't really what I was about. That wasn't what I was about.
I'm so
right?
curious though what they would suggest, what people would suggest.
Yeah, and
For
that's another, and another study. I think faster.
Yeah.
um,
Accept all communication, probably.
well, definitely that for sure. And I guess maybe I will say the biggest thing, and I have a paper on this published. The biggest thing was time. Time.
Yeah.
Time, because it really does matter.
Yeah. There are two questions from Monica. Maybe we can start our observations and assessments with how does your child or person, how does the person ask or say no currently? So let me see. And how do we improve education and SLP training programs for AAC?
Well, the second question is really big, Monica. The first question I'm going to say, instead of how does your child ask or say no, I'm going to challenge you to go and look at the pragmatics profile. And it talks about all the variety of functions of language. And I know Kate Ahern has a beautiful diagram that says, yes, I can request, but can I do all of these other things? So unpacking all the ways that the child is currently addressing the various communication functions is really helpful.
There's another one, Kathy.
Sorry?
There's another one. There's a pragmatics profile, but there's also the early social communication profile. Very similar, but for younger ones, which fits right into there to answer
and
this question.
there's a pragmatics profile for preschoolers. There's a pragmatics so something to really look at all the various communication functions. Monica, how do we improve education and SLP training programs? I think to help people be aware of the fact that this is, here's what I'm going to say. Really what you're doing as an SLP is doing language therapy with kids. Now, the language therapy needs to include all the multimodal methods of not only expression, but reception. And so when speech therapists say to me, oh, I don't know what, I say, well, do you know how to do language therapy? Well, then you think about this, but your modality is multimodal, electronic, non-electronic, but that's a simple answer. I really don't know how to improve education programs in SLP, except you guys just demand better, and we all demand better, I guess. Yeah.
This is a great question too. Love that shift to no electronic and electronic instead of low and high tech. How would you differentiate so-called mid-tech versus high-tech? A step-by-step or Go Talk is electronic, but of course very different than an iPad or a dedicated speech-generating device. Curious where those mid-tech devices fit in with the new terminology you shared. Thanks.
Well, they are electronic, but they are not language systems, not even close to language systems. And so I do think they have a purpose, which is participation. But if we're thinking about language development, a non-electronic robust system and an electronic robust system is more what we need to be thinking about. But I could talk about, I see Franklin's giving us the 5-minute warning. These are things that I could talk about forever. Any of you who want to come and join with me in the certificate for teaching students with complex communication needs, we'll talk a whole lot about this. Deadline is coming up. That's my little advertisement. I know Franklin wants to do Sheridan. I would love to do a quarterly chat with you. I see lots of, if anyone here, if anyone has more questions, I'm gonna, hang on a minute, sorry. If you want to,
we can probably keep these questions and maybe answer them offline afterward.
Sure, or I'm going to say that I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to share it in a different way. And I'm going to say, just hang on, can you guys see this? Just email me.
Yeah,
okay?
There you go.
Just email me. Either one works. Email me with your question. I'd be delighted to respond. And yeah, and I'm hoping we can keep track of these, and I will do my best to respond. Thank you so much, you guys. You've been great, and I love your questions. Franklin, I think you're going to take over now. Is that not true? Thank you all. Beautiful questions. Go out and keep doing good work with kids and people and everyone. I know you are.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that I'm going to take over, Kathy. I think that's stretching it a bit, I think. But I will go on a limb here and just first of all thank everyone who joined us from literally around the world. This was truly a global event, not just from Canada and Gaoke, our cousins in the United States as well. But we also had people from Western Europe, from Africa, and Australasia registered for this this event. I think that's a testament to Kathy, you as a professional, and the topic. So thanks to our attendees. Of course, a huge thank you to you, Kathy. Mariska, thank you very much for your work in moderating tonight. And I just wanted to also just remind everyone that Isaac is running an all virtual event this year, and it is taking place during AAC Awareness Month. That is in October of this year. The theme for this year's AAC Awareness Month is Vibes of AAC. And we are actually going to be releasing the email tomorrow, our May newsletter. And in that newsletter, you will see all of the current presenters that have been confirmed. And we anticipate in the next couple of weeks also providing everyone with an update on all the presentations that those presenters are going to be giving. So the event is October 29th and 30th. Registration is open. Please do visit our website, conference.isaac-online.org. That's the